Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Chalmley. This is another in the increasingly long series on Shropshire churches. It's just that Shropshire has so many magnificent churches, and most of them are open at the moment, which is excellent. And one of the things I want to do with these videos is encourage people to visit where you can. This is the church of the Holy Trinity, Holdgate. And it's a magnificent Norman building. It's a building that has a certain primitive feel to it. It's got medieval furnishings, Jacobean furnishings. It has the most fantastic Norman font. And there's not an awful lot in terms of history in the area, in terms of notable events, but the building is fantastic. So without further ado, let's get down to having a look around the church of the Holy Trinity, Holdgate. So here we are, Holy Trinity, Holdgate. You'll have to bear with the fact it's a bit gloomy in here, because it is a bit gloomy in here. That's simply the way it is. On a sunnier day, it would be a bit brighter, but it's a medieval church, it's a Norman church. They had to balance out light and heat and balance out the needs of summer and winter. The doors are kept open here. It's a building that has an ancient feel to it, and nothing more ancient than the font. This is the true glory of Holdgate. If it had nothing else, the font would be something that was much spoken of. You can see the little faces on the bottom. But this is very, very old. It may even be Anglo-Saxon, with its twisting forms around the bowl. Knotwork, and it's just fantastic. Originally there was no tower. You can just see here, this is the west end, that's the old west window. The tower has been built later on in the 14th, maybe 15th century. The pews are very largely 17th century. The church warden's reading desk at the back, or the perhaps the clerk's reading desk at the back has the date 1707, and MC will be to the church warden. We've got converted oil lamps. The electricity is not left on in the summer. I understand that. The pews have doors. You can see they are solid lumps of timber. There's nothing flimsy about them. A medieval tomb recess can just be seen there, now obscured by the solid 17th century pews. There is underfloor heating, you can just see there, which I'm sure comes in very handy, or came in very handy, in the winter. We have a harmonium, again, note the window behind, and here we have the remains, at least, of a big house pew. You can just see here the later work, but that's Jacobean back there, and that would have emphasised, probably been at the back of the pew, just emphasising the importance of the people who sat there. The pulpit is a very simple 18th, 19th century, late 18th, early 19th century example, nothing terribly exciting. The royal arms are Hanoverian. The chancel is quite simple. You see the plaster's being stripped off the walls. You've got a double lancet, a very small east window, an altar-style table, 19th century Victorian, Sanctus, 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 holy, 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 as an awmbry there, and a piscina. 18th century communion rails, they're always interesting. And again, it's those, as I've said many times, the close-spaced balusters to make sure the dogs didn't get through, because if they did, they could cause all kinds of bother in many ways. A number of burials within. There's a bit of a damp problem in here, and that, I think, is why they keep the doors open. Rather nice glazing bars, they're decorative glazing. And looking all the way west, this is a two-cell structure. There's well, this is all that's left of the choir stalls. I'm sure there were choir stalls here, but there aren't any. There were, but there aren't any more. To coin a phrase, the stained glass is very simple. You've just got the east end. Now those look like Kemp. Kemp was one of the popular 19th century, late 20th century artists, and to the glory of the ever-blessed Trinity and in loving memory of Arthur Littleton Hames, born 1868, died 1886, also of captain of Henry Everard Hames, Captain RAMC, that's Royal Army Medical Corps, born 1872, died in active service in Egypt, 1904. So Army medic killed on active service in Egypt. You can see the brass cross at the end there. There's a simplicity about this building in spite of its size. And it also has this feeling, this is an old building. You will notice that the pulpit appears not to be used at the moment because they've taken the steps away. I suspect there are health and safety issues. Here's the other stained glass window. Blessed art thou among women, and of course it's the Virgin Mary and the Nativity. In the love of God, this window is dedicated to the dear memory of J.H.M. Hames by her children, 1840 to 1922. You will notice that sensibilities have changed since the 1920s. This memorial was erected at the request of Ethel Margaret Decimer Hames, died 7th July 1969 after the death of her cousin and husband, Frank Sedley Hames, died 20th April 1974, in his memory, and also that of her sisters Ellen, Mary and Dorothy Nona, and her brothers Robert Lester Hames, DSO RA, and Henry Everard Hames, RAMC. So that suggests, again, the Hames family are the family at the manor house here. There's a slight outward lean of the south wall, not unusual in this part of the world. Foundations settled after building. It's quite safe. Yes, you see this is going to be the big house pew, I expect. And this would be the rector's pew. This would be where the rector's family sat, close to the pulpit. Medieval windows, and largely it's coloured or clear glass. And yes, it's a very simple building in spite of its size, but it's big. And here we are back at the font with its strange patterns and its strange creatures round the base. It really is there is the older harmonium at the back, which, because one never knows what's used these days. And so we'll go outside. Given the setup of this church, I think we'll go with a single continuous take to go outside. And outside is such a beautifully English scene. You can see just over the graveyard the top of the red of the red phone box. Of course, before mobile phones, that was, if you needed a telephone, you had to find one of them, unless you could find someone with a phone at their home. Now let's turn around and look at the porch, and this is the Norman south door. Quite intact. It has quite a lot of the features of Norman doors. You can see the outer edge there. You have a ball moulding that turns into a chevron. Then you've got this zigzag moulding, and then you have this foliage, flowers, and then the innermost is the beak heads. You can see some of the heads there quite clearly, and these are definitely birds with beaks. And you can see why they're called beak heads. It's just a description. And the capitals. So this is a magnificent piece of Romanesque Norman work. The porch is later, but the porch has protected it. You can see here we are amidst the hills. You see the fields below and the communication mast on the hill above. And there's the porch, and there is this big, solid tower, 14th century by the look of it. This is another one of those cases where they've allowed the churchyard grass to grow quite high. There's a holly here with a blackberry twisting around it. But we will be able to get a stroll around the outside, because it's always important, I think, to have a look at the outside of these buildings. And you've got pinnacles on the top, heads, grotesques below the belfry, and the string course below the belfry. They're not gargoyles, because gargoyles have a function of, basically they are decorative water spouts. These are just grotesques, they're just ugly faces. So there is the church. You can see before the tower was built, it was a very low-lying building. You could miss it. You can't now with the tower. And there is a weather vane on top. There is the typical weathercock, the cockerel weather vane. It's a traditional form for weather vanes. The churchyard is a haven for wildflowers. Part of it, of course, it's simply done because it's cheaper not to mow it. But it's not just that. It's also emphasising the role of the churchyard in providing a habitat for nature. We've got some whacking great granite memorials in here. This is the north side. There's no sign of a north door. There are windows that look again to be medieval. The tower, no grotesques on this side. There does appear to be a gargoyle up there. Now, as we get a bit closer, you can just see here the easternmost tower buttress and the westernmost nave buttress, how they butt up against each other because the tower and the nave are built at different dates. There's also a line that suggests that the roof line has been altered at some point. Fashions in church architecture change. There are such things as fashions in church architecture, and yes, it's a rather overgrown churchyard, but I say it's a deliberate overgrown. It's not simply neglect. So we have to go along this path here. We just have to see the stonework and how this stone is. I think it's called local stone, as where the window opened. It got cracked at some point, and you can just see straight through and out the other side. Water butt, for the idea is to allow people to water gravestones and this sort of thing, and to water flowers on gravestones, that sort of thing. So this is the north side. It's the plain side. It's the side that is very, very overgrown. And then we come round. There's the churchyard yew. Yews, as I said, are very typical churchyard plants because they're these incredibly long-lived conifers. They have a kind of meaning to do with eternal life and immortality and this sort of thing. And so beneath the yew tree, and here we are, the East End, and simple architecture, nice big windows. The priest's door, the door in the chancel was there for the priest to be able to go in, and he'd have a path from the rectory or whatever at this end, and he'd be able to get in. And of course, before vestries were a thing, he had to come into the church in his robes, in his whatever he wore. And there we are back at the porch, and you can see there, yes, where the roof line has been altered. The Normans liked their steeply pitched roofs, which are a good thing in this climate. because really, and there by the door, they're the boot scrapers. As you imagine, before paved roads or anything, if it was a wet day, your labouring men and women would come up the path, and their boots would be clogged with thick mud, and so boot scrapers were provided for them. Little benches in the church porch are a sign of the times. The hand sanitizer even, and wasn't aware until just now that hand sanitizer was something of a tongue twister, but it is. And there you can see again where the original church has had the tower just built up against it. They haven't been tied together at all. And the porch again. So there we are, Holy Trinity Church, Holdgate, Shropshire. And we'll end in the porch looking at that magnificent Norman arch. It's such a beautiful piece of Norman work. It and the font alone, it's worth coming here just to see them in all their glory. Well, thank you for watching, and hope you enjoy these videos. I say I enjoy making them. So, and may God bless you and keep you. Amen.